Smoking has been a hot, controversial topic for many years in this country. As more and more towns go smoke-free, many families have conflict about who's smoking in the house and who's not, and what the effects are of secondhand smoke, who has the right to say who shouldn't do what with their body in terms of smoking or not. Today we're talking about this hazy hazard on This Life.
You know, now that we're living in this smoke-free environment, I have to confess something I saw last week.
No,
I was walking around and I suddenly went, oh, I know what that is. A cigarette. Oh, tobacco. And I really wasn't upset about it.
Did you like it?
Well, it wasn't a like. It was just a memory of what it
déjà vu.
smells like to have someone smoking a cigarette close by you. But they weren't close to me. It was us. I'd walked somewhere and someone had not been there long ago. And I thought to myself, you know, it's funny. Living in a smoke-free environment, I take it for granted. You just don't.
I see.
You don't smell.
It was more like a memory,
It was
like
a
something
memory.
unusual.
Yes,
not something
it was
you
like
see
I
every
remember
day
my
or
grandfather smoking a pipe when I was growing up as a little girl in Jamaica. You know, and just the smell of cigarette just hovering in the air. You know, so.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I had the opposite experience. I saw someone for the first time with one of those electronic
Really?
cigarettes.
Oh.
And how did I know it was electronic? Is that it was so perfect and it wasn't moving. The person was standing close to me and it wasn't getting shorter. It was just unusual. So I kept looking and thinking, there's something different, but I can't tell what
Could
it
you
is.
smell it?
I don't remember smelling it.
Wow.
I don't know if there's a smoke.
A lot of people, I don't know, do you think a
lot?
lot of people are going to know what an electronic cigarette is?
Well,
I
it's a
didn't know about
cigarette.
it until recently.
Well, it's a cigarette that's not a real cigarette. But they get nicotine from it, but there's no smoke, as I understand it. At least when I was standing next to this person, I couldn't see any smoke. So there's no secondhand smoke. They get nicotine and they get the feeling of the cigarette in their mouth. But even places that outlaw smoking, I believe some of those places outlaw the electronic cigarettes anyway. I'm not,
Well, mine almost seems a little indelicate, but this week I was talking to someone who started coughing and hacking and this loose, terrible sounding cough, and she was a smoker. And I said, oh, do you have a cold? Are you sick? And she said, oh, no, I'm a smoker. This happens every morning when she wakes up. Of course, it kind of to clear everything, and it was just such an awful sound. I thought, in my mind, I'm really glad that I don't smoke, because that just sounded so awful.
doesn't it make you want to say something? I hate to see women smoking because you know their skin is going to suffer.
But it's such an indelicate, hacking, mucusy, terrible sound. We'll stop there.
Thanks, Marvin.
Now
All
I'm
right.
in my mind.
The case I'm going to refer to is about Janelle. She's about 17 years old and a new Christian. She lives with her mother and father, who are not religious. Her father smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day, but says regularly that he is quitting. Janelle wants to help her father quit smoking and decides to place little notes at the ashtrays that state, "Thou shalt not smoke." She is aware that there is no scripture that actually says this, but feels that the Bible probably would not be in favor of smoking, so she hopes these little signs will help him quit.
17-year-old, bless her heart.
Yes, because I think what would happen is her father may smoke more or get mad at her for leaving notes all around the house, telling her, thou shalt not quit, thou shalt not smoke.
Well, if nothing else, this story gives a real good demonstration of that, the fact that everybody is affected by somebody's
Yes.
behavior in the family, and how frightening it is to know that someone's jeopardizing their health that way. I can understand the concern.
Oh, I know. It's so funny. Teenagers, I remember when I was a teenager, you so often want to correct all the things you
Yes,
see.
yes.
You're sure you could just have a perfect family of this and that and that.
Yes.
So I understand her angst.
There's some interesting research about the kinds of family behaviors that support people in addictive processes like overeating or smoking or anything like that, gambling. And it's usually not the one that tries so hard to make it stop. It's usually someone who is supportive but from a distance a little bit so that they're not as invested in the process, even though it's really scary to see someone close to you do that.
Go through the process. And I mean, she's zealous. She's very. I know she's concerned about her father's well-being, and I'm curious though as to how her father would respond to that, because she says her family's not a religious one. She's not become a Christian. It may actually backfire if she's not
Exactly.
careful.
She's in a difficult place because she's the new Christian. And it probably is already a little bit annoying to her family, and this may not help.
Yeah.
Well, there are Christians that smoke, though.
Oh, yes. There are. It sounds like this isn't one of them.
Like this is a new experience
Yeah.
for her and her family.
Really difficult. Well, how do you help somebody get over
That's
smoking?
an interesting comment, though, Barbara, and that's something we ought to sort of, it seems like, point at. There are Christians who smoke.
Well, smoking is, we just talked about, is an addictive behavior, is it not?
So is overeating.
Yes, but we don't talk about them in the same way.
There aren't any laws to ban
To ban
overeating.
overeating.
Maybe
Yes.
there should be.
Establishments.
Yet, I'm thinking it may be heading that way. But I think, how do people, because there is no specific text in Scripture that says, thou shalt not smoke, how do you negotiate and navigate that? Growing up, again, the community that people went to church. When church was over, they went out and they smoked.
Oh, is that right? That was just a common
Have a
thing.
cigarette
Have a
after the
cigarette
service.
after the service. They had said through service, and they went out and had a cigarette afterwards. I mean, as a child growing up within that context, I never thought twice about it. It wasn't a, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't a moral thing. It was just a choice that they were making. It wasn't until I got older that I had an understanding that cigarette smoking was actually addicting, that there was nicotine in cigarette that made you want to smoke more, and all the different things you've learned. And then the whole issue of secondhand smoke, that was information that we got later on in life, but it was just something people did.
According to one statistic, U.S. consumers spent about $90 billion on tobacco products in
Wow.
2006.
Wow.
A pack-a-day smoker burns through $31.50 per week, or this is just one pack a day, or 1,638. How is that per year? So in other words, you'd have enough to go on a vacation.
Oh, wow, if you didn't smoke.
If you didn't smoke.
Or, here, this is interesting, a 40-year-old who quits smoking and puts that money into a 401k, if they smoke between 1 and 2 packs, and earn a good amount of interest, will make $250,000 plus by the age of 70.
Are you serious?
Ooh.
Wow.
That alone is enough to
That's
make
a lot of
anyone-
money. You can
That is a
retire
lot.
well.
Well, from my religious subculture, the whole smoking issue is one of just trying to have as clean and healthy a body as possible, because God communicates with us through our minds and through our thinking and our behavior. So, yeah, it's an interesting thought. Bless her heart, thou shalt not smoke.
She's trying to appeal to the good Lord. And like you say, Barbara, in a way, there is an appeal that is scriptural, and that is our bodies are the temple of God. And what to do with an addictive process, whether it's addiction to eating or to smoking. But isn't it interesting how it seems that we place the addiction to smoker on more horrible moral grounds than eating? Don't you think?
Well, if you overeat, you only hurt yourself, but if you're
Right,
smoking, you're
smoking.
blowing smoke around,
On
and there's an
other people.
increase in breast cancer and
Right.
asthma. But I think they're all really tough.
I saw a cigarette ad. I was looking at cigarette ads the other day in one of my classes. We were looking at the ads. And there was an ad in the 1970s, I think, of a man blowing smoke in a woman's face. And she was doing like this, like she was enjoying it. And it says, blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere.
Wow.
Oh, my
And that was
word.
before I mean, it was just so amazing. That was before the whole issue of secondhand smoke was even understood. But oh, there she was enjoying the smoke.
That is wrong on so
I
many
know,
different
I
levels.
know. But I mean, there's no way that would be an ad today. Yeah.
No,
Right.
never.
Right, no.
Well,
And the Marlboro man,
oh yes, the cool remote cowboy.
I heard that he died of lung cancer.
Well, there's a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. You know, but well, I don't mean to be rude, but you know, of course. But then we have people like George Burns who smoked and lived to be 100, and that's the case everyone cites. Why do I need to quit? Because there are people like George Burns.
You know, you asked the question about, you know, why is it that with cigarette smoking, it seems that there's so much of a furor about it more than there is with overeating. I think a lot of it has to do with that we see, you know, overeating. Your body responds to it over a period of time. With the smoking, yes, it's true, it's over a period of time as well. But for people who have children in the household where parents are both smokers, those children are affected.
Badly.
Not just 10 years from now,
Right.
but every day their quality
Immediately.
of life is being reduced.
Right.
If you're in an environment, I remember living in New York, and when schools became smoke-free environments, seeing teachers outside on their breaks in the freezing cold,
Yeah.
you know, just not even with coats on, they were out there smoking. And I thought to myself, now you have to tell me,
Now, what
that's not
messages
just
does
fun.
that send?
That's not just fun. There's something going on if you won't even put your coat on. And you will go out in cold weather
Sure.
to get some cigarettes. So yes, there, you know, the addictive part of it, I think, has a lot to do with people's inability to stop, even when they know they're hurting themselves.
Which is why it's so hard to help people stop. And I remember one person that I know was saying to one of his relatives, you know, I know you're struggling with smoking. I hope the next time I see you, it's not for your funeral.
Oh, that helped.
Well, it was a shock.
Oh,
It was a
well,
shock.
so
But
it
so
did
how
help.
do you help? How do you help someone? Do you continually ask and become a nag and then they shut you out? Or do you try to send them products to help them stop smoking? Or do you have a heart-to-heart when you say something like this man said, I hope I don't see you in a box next time? You know, how do you do it?
You know, I think sometimes we have to find out why people do it. Because for some, especially with children who start young, one of the statistics says here that adults with at least a bachelor's degree were less likely to be current smokers. So education seems to be one of the factors that help to minimize how people smoke. But smoking seems so cool, you know, for the young. It's something you do with your friends if you're feeling down or you're feeling sad, or, you know, it becomes
sign of being
it's
more
a sign
adult.
of being more adult.
Yeah.
So it's this it's being able to start pulling away the misnomers and giving people information and saying, hey, this is a habit forming behavior.
Sure.
Well, and there's certain advertising that appeals to young kids.
Yes. Yes.
And if a young person starts smoking before the age of 16 or 15, it's much more difficult to quit than if they start later. So we were looking at this one package that was developed just for teenage girls.
Wow.
And it almost looked like the front of a diary. It had little frills at the top and little
Are you
frills at the
kidding?
bottom. And
Really?
it said, light and luscious.
Oh,
well,
my word.
do we remember that word luscious? I used to say it all the time as a girl. It's so luscious.
Like lipstick.
Like lipstick, exactly.
Right.
So here they developed this pack just for teenage girls because if they can get them hooked, then they stay hooked,
Wow.
you know, forever. And it's like you think, well, it's not just the fault of the person smoking. They are caught up in this whole web of...
And the fact that there's actually a drug in there that gets you addicted.
Sure.
Right.
And I think that's the piece people think, well, if I start, I can stop anytime I want. So when you're having conversations with people about their smoking, you know, they're like, oh, I'm not addicted. Yes, you are. You know, and because now I have to go, I'm an addict. That's not a word I
Yeah,
want.
that's for druggies.
That's for druggies. I'm not a druggie. I just smoke.
This is
cigarettes.
socially accepted.
This is just social. This is just something I do socially.
You know how my father taught me never to smoke? And at the time, he was a smoker. We were not a Christian family or a family that were against smoking. He was a smoker, and this is how he taught me never to want to smoke. I came to him wanting to smoke, and he said, okay, I'm going to help you make a good choice. I want you to take this cigarette, put it in your mouth, and take the largest breath in that you can possibly take. And he had me practice. let's practice. That's good. All right, now I'm going to put the cigarette in your mouth and you take the biggest breath you can take, and I did, and I thought my life was over.
Wow.
I thought I was going to cough myself silly, and I never ever wanted to quit. To make a long story short, he quit later too, but he did not want me smoking.
That's the interesting thing about a lot of parents who smoke. They don't want their kids to smoke, and they'll say to their kids, don't do this, this is a filthy habit. And it's that whole issue of do what I say, not what I do.
Not what I do.
What I do.
Well, we have some email questions here. And this actually reflects what we were talking about before. I smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, and everyone says it's bad for me. But my grandfather smoked a pack a day and lived 92 years, so why should I quit?
You know, that kind of question is a little bit difficult for me. It's like, in my mind, and I don't want to belittle this person, but in my mind it's like saying, I walk out in front of cars every day. I cross the road every day without looking, and look where I am. I don't understand why, just because someone has escaped a danger, they would recommend it
To someone else.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, just because it worked for your grandfather does not mean it's going to work for you.
Don't you think they know that?
You know, I maybe they do, but there's this. It seems as if there's this tug of war between. I hear you telling me I shouldn't do this, but I see the example there, and come on, he made it through. It's almost like playing Russian roulette with your life, and they don't even realize that. You never know. And I'm wondering. I don't know how old this person is, but if their grandfather was 92, their life. The society they lived in, just the air they breathed,
hard
they worked, they walked a lot more, they
Yeah.
did a lot more physical labor than we do. We get in our cars, we drive. Get out of our cars, we go where we're going. You know, because people who are really athletic don't smoke.
That's a
They
good
just
point.
don't. So for you to think that you live to be 92 and have the same quality of life as your grandfather, that's not very wise. Statistics are out there to say no, you're not going to have that same experience.
I think some people, though, they know in life they're going to have a couple of vices, and to quit smoking is difficult. My father one day quit smoking and never smoked again. But most people don't do that.
That's right.
That's a very
That's hard.
unusual. It's
Yes.
hard.
Yes. I've
And
seen-
my father ate jelly beans every time he got the urge to stop smoking, and he wouldn't.
To
he would-
stop smoking.
I
or
mean, every
start-
time he wanted to pick up
Yeah.
a cigarette, he'd put a
Jelly
jelly
bean
bean
in
in
his
his mouth, and he loathed jelly beans
Wow.
after that. But it was that substitution.
Yeah.
Here's another question. Aren't there healthy cigarettes like low tar filtered ones, or the one you mentioned, electronic?
Everything's relative. It's like, well, we have better emissions on our cars now, and so is it healthy to have emissions in our air? It's so much better than it used to be when we had smog everywhere. That's the kind of thinking.
Yes.
But
Yes.
none of it's good.
No.
Well, why? See, my question is, so what if there's a healthy cigarette? Why be anywhere close to any sort of addictive process that runs your life?
Well, I'm struggling with the term healthy and cigarette in the same
The same
the same
sentence.
sentence.
Yes.
It's just, for me, I'm just, no. How could it be
I'm
healthy?
trying to think of another addiction that we would do that with, like a healthy drug or a
Healthy gambling.
healthy gambling, or it's like it's a strange
It
concept.
doesn't seem like one.
Here's another one. I have smoked on and off for several years. Is smoking really that addictive? I feel I can quit whenever I want.
I guess I wonder why they haven't.
Right?
I mean, when you present all the medical evidence about what happens to your lungs and all the hacking and coughing and, the yellowed teeth and the bad breath and the
fingernails,
fingernails
your lips
and
are
the
different
cost,
color.
I don't know why people would want to persist in smoking. I mean, I know that there are deeply physiological and psychological addictive issues, but I find it hard to think.
I have my own email question. It's not here. I want to interject one. And that is, there are people listening to us right now who aren't smokers. And they're going to say, oh, this is not for me. And so here's my question. I struggle when I'm around smokers to know how to not offend them, but to preserve my space of not having to inhale their smoke.
You can start.
What would you say to that? How do you negotiate that sometimes at some foreign airports,
Oh, boy.
or with a friend, a person who's smoking in a car that you're sitting in. That's my email question.
Well, one thing you could do is start hacking and coughing. Well, I'm gonna
Grab your
grab your
throat.
throat. You know,
Die.
like I'm gonna die. And again, here's the interesting thing: some brands of cigarettes don't bother me, other brands do, or tar. I guess I don't know what it is, but I'll walk out and I will immediately start hacking and coughing.
I start sneezing.
Yeah. So and my mom will start sneezing and she'll start looking around. You know, that evil look,
Like,
like
who's smoking?
How dare
How
they?
dare they smoke? And so you kind of look at them with the evil eye, and you look away and you sneeze somewhere and you look at them. But that person's just like, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
especially when I come out of the airport. And when we get out of the airport, everybody who's been flying is lighting
that's
up.
true.
Oh, right.
So you're
right.
Yeah.
coming out to get to the car and you're
In a-
waiting
in a-
cloud.
and
a
it's
whole
a
cloud of
smoke. And I think outside of asking people to not smoke where you are, politely, these are people that you
Would you
know.
actually do that? Like, can I hear how it would sound? Because I struggle with this. Would you just say, excuse me, but would you mind? Or
Please
how-
put out your cigarette.
Yeah, how would you do it?
If I can't move away, for instance, if it's a space that I can move away from the person, then I'd move. I'd give them the space. But if it's an enclosed
Yeah,
space,
say it's enclosed.
I would say, would you please not smoke that right here?
Oh.
It's really giving me a hard time. You know, I have trouble breathing, or because I wouldn't say it smells awful and you really shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't
You
work.
stink, by the way.
Yeah, but you know, I'd ask them, would you? This is a very small enclosed space. Would you mind not smoking here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, right now. If my children are with me, then definitely.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm hoping that I'd feel comfortable to say, please don't do that here. Definitely for the sake of my children.
I would certainly do that if I was in a non-smoking area and somebody lit up. I would say, this is a
Oh,
non-smoking
that
area.
part's
Please
easy,
put out your
right,
cigarette.
Right.
I wouldn't hesitate. But it is awkward to try to,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to violate someone else's right to do whatever it is that they want to do, but as silly as I think it is, but at the same time, that is their right.
No, it's just hard sometimes because you're with someone who may even roll down the window and say, I'll roll down the window so you don't have to smell the smoke. But that's only the larger part of it. There's still smoke that's coming in. And it's hard to know how to say, you know, I'm still struggling, but,
Or to say, I'm not going to drive with you anymore if you don't stop smoking.
well,
I don't know if that would be enough incentive.
I've never heard of someone dying from actually smoking. I have heard of lung cancer, but are there other health effects associated with smoking?
Well, I talked a minute ago about your teeth turning yellow, your fingers turning yellow.
And then heart disease, something that's definitely
Wrinkles,
wrinkles.
skin.
It's hard on your arteries
Mm-hmm.
to smoke.
Because you're reducing the amount of oxygen that's going
Right.
through your body by putting the smoke inside of your lungs.
It's also the possibility of getting COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which comes with muscle wasting and like a concave chest, and it's like emphysema, where you just wheeze and can't get your breath. And
Some people will
that's
say, but look,
terrible.
it keeps me thin.
Yeah,
Yeah, at what cost?
so
though?
does death.
Oh.
But I don't mean to be so cryptic, but it's true, don't you think?
Yeah.
You lose a lot of weight that way.
I have no words, Barbara.
I know that's kind of the bull in the china shop approach, but
My husband of 22 years smokes every day, and I don't like it. I've asked him to stop, but he won't. How can I get him to quit?
Now, this is interesting. My husband of 22 years, it sounds like he's been smoking since the day they met. And, you know, what is that statement that says, don't date a person you can't marry? That's what I would want to say to this person. The mistake, I mean, I empathize, but I suspect she married a smoker. And that's
you
a
can't
very
just
different,
get someone
yeah.
to change just because you decided
Exactly.
after. It changes the whole marriage contract.
But then again, here I'm thinking, this may be someone who's been married and had no problems with them smoking, but is recently coming to information
Sure.
and realizes, you know what, you need to quit. And
Or I need you to quit.
you to
Yeah.
quit. And so, you know, I'm thinking there are stop smoking cessation classes that they could encourage the person to participate in. A positive thing would be to talk about their grandchildren growing old together, you know, and saying, I really want our quality of life to be good. And while it's true we've done this for years, could you really consider letting it go? There's a commercial that's on right now for one of those stop smoking programs. And the woman says that her sons, she has young sons, that one of them actually counted down with her as she was going through the process.
Wow.
And she's been saying to her son, I mean, it's a commercial, of course, but she was saying to her son, don't do this. You know, I don't want you to ever pick up this habit. And because her sons are watching her go through it. So I think one of the things she could say to her husband is, you know, honey, we're getting, you know, let's think about our future. Let's think about our grandchildren. Let's think about where we want to retire and how we want to live in the life that we want. Because, you know, yes, she may have like I said, if he's smoking when you marry him, he's probably going to be smoking,
continue,
you know,
right.
during your relationship. But if she gets to that point where she's like, I think that would be some ways that she could encourage
She
him.
could, depending on what her financial situation is too, she could get an expensive air filter. There are units that roll around on wheels. She could put it over by her side of the bed, or she could make it follow her through the house if she needed. But, you know, she could get something like that if that would help. My son is 15 and I believe he smokes. Is he just experimenting, or could this be a major issue? And how do I bring it up if it is?
Okay, coming from a woman who does not have a 15-year-old, I would say, if they're 15, you still have a right to help them see what they can and can't do at the house. They're not 18; they're not on their own, and that changes there. So it seems it's important to take a stronger stand.
Yes.
When they are still in your home. And you still can ask them to make certain.
So you'll make sure that they don't smoke at home, just at school, and just after church or out behind the barn or wherever. How do you ensure that they're not? They're 15.
Now here's the thing, because as Carla said, and I want to affirm that, as a parent,
Yeah, you can certainly
you make
set
sure
that
you
limit.
set your boundaries.
Sure.
Now here's the follow-up, because more than likely he's not smoking at home.
Right.
You know, 15-year-olds that come home and smoke only smoke if their parents are smoking too. So it's you cannot be a police person. You can't watch them. You can't, you know, have something on GPS on their phone. Oh, they're smoking right now. So it's important to have that relationship, to really start talking about, well, what's going on with you? Why are you drawn to the cigarette smoking? You know, especially if no one else in the family is smoking. Let's talk. And I think more than anything, it's for them to really work through and talk through and see if they can get to what's at the bottom of this smoking, because it's expensive. He's 15. He doesn't have a job.
Yeah, where's he getting those from?
Where's he getting those from?
You know, we spent a lot of time today talking about the hazards of smoking. And we thank you so much for joining us today on This Life.